recording. So this webinar is recorded, and so don't worry about making copious notes. So if there's anything that you want to recap on afterwards, there'll be an email that will be sent to you, and within that email will be a link to view the video. Obviously, you can recap that video in your own time, but also if you do have colleagues, etc., that you feel would be interested, but they haven't had the chance to or couldn't get the chance to join up, please feel free to circulate the link to others as well. So as well as the video recording, we do have Michelle, who's doing the closed captioning for this webinar. So if you haven't spotted it already, on your Zoom interface, there should be an icon, CC, for closed captioning. Turn that on, and you'll get a little closed caption box appear with the text of obviously what I'm talking about. As well as the link to the video that you'll get in the email, there's also a survey. So the survey, it's always great to get your feedback. So that will be asking for within the questions within the survey. So what you think of the webinar. But the other things as well, you can also request a copy of Inspiration 9. So if you don't have your own copy, and as you've attended today, you can get a free copy. So just tick the box and we'll get that license sent across to you. The other thing as well is if you require a CPD certificate for attending to build up your CPD hours, then again, there's a tick box that you can send and we can send you a CPD certificate. We're also going to be obviously talking in this webinar about our vision in terms of how we see the product evolving. And within the survey, there is a question where we want to ask you what are the types of features that you want to see in Inspiration, but also some of the existing features that you think could be improved or things that you actually would like to take out. So we're inviting obviously yourselves to obviously see what our vision is, but also to input as well. Okay, I've just got a question in. Where do I click for the free copy of the Inspiration? So that is in the webinar survey that will be going out tomorrow. So when you get that link, just open up the survey and there's an option there for you to claim that free software. Now, as I'm talking, presenting, I'm sure you may have some questions that you want to ask. So there's the chat panel. You can put your questions within that, or there's the Q&A tool within Zoom. So I've left the last 15 minutes or so of the session for Q&A. So at the end, what I'll do is I'll go through the questions and I'll aim to answer those as best as I can live. Okay, I think that's everything in terms of the housekeeping. And so without further ado, I'll now go over to what I'm going to be presenting. And so hopefully, let's kick off. So as I said earlier, Tech Ed Marketing is the new publishers of Inspiration 9. And we are not just selling the product, we are investing in the product. So in terms of new product development, a new version, we're aiming to plan for a new version for 2020. Just in terms of my background, I've worked with Inspiration, the creators, for over 20 years. I was involved in the launch of their new product at the time, Inspiration 4, into the UK market, and it has been a very successful product within this particular area of the market. And so I've had a long history within Inspiration. I like to say that I know lots and everything about Inspiration, but even when I'm delivering training sessions, there will be someone that will show me something, some hidden gem within Inspiration that I didn't know. So as well as obviously working within Inspiration software, we provide assistive technology consultancy for a range of different companies globally. Some brands that you might recognize, such as Sonosant with audio note taker, we work closely with them. We've done work with scanning pens on their exam pens. Some latest clients are Got-It, who are based in Israel, and Cure, which is a Finnish product. And so with our expertise, we help companies in terms of their strategy, in terms of entering markets, but also product development as well. So, and we work right down from early years through to elementary, junior high, through to adult education. Now, our third string to our bow aside from the publishing and the event side of things, is that we organize events. So, and not just for our own products, but we do this on behalf of lots of different assistive technology companies that are out there. And so webinars that we host, and also in terms of events that we do. So we do a national event in the UK called ATEC, which is where the industry comes together. And we also do a range of different regional events, a kind of speed dating format where you walk around a room in a carousel format, and you get to see a range of different assistive technology in short, punchy bursts. Really just as a quick way to build up in terms of your knowledge of assistive tech. So that's just a whistle-stop tour of what tech ed marketing is about. But really here today, what we're talking about is Inspiration 9. And so in terms of the agenda, is first of all looking at what our vision is beyond version 9. What are our plans for the version that we're looking to release in 2020? The other thing that I want to talk about is our Inspiration 9 Certified Trainer Program. So this is a program that we've run in the UK for a number of years. We've revamped it with a new e-learning platform to deliver on it. And also it's the opportunity to launch this globally. And it is a free training program that you can sign up for. So if you are a practitioner that are training students and users in terms of using Inspiration 9, this might be something that you're interested in. And I'll give you a quick tour of what that course looks like. Now, the other thing as well is I'll give you a taster in terms of our study skills approach to how we promote Inspiration 9. So a bit of a whistle-stop tour. Normally we take an hour just to look at a particular study skills. Obviously, we're trying to pack quite a lot into this hour's webinar. So I'll give you hopefully a good taste in terms of our approach. Hopefully, then you'll be interested to see some of the other webinars in terms of the other strategies in more detail. And finally, we'll wrap up with a Q&A session where I'll go for your questions and I'll be more than happy to answer them as best as I can. Okay, so let's look at what we're looking at before version 9. So since we acquired the rights to publish Inspiration 9, obviously we've been building it in within the business. But the other thing as well is that we've been from day one looking at what are we going to do with this product, taking it forward. And so first of all was looking at what are the values, our research and development values around the product. And so, you know, what this will help us to do is guide us in terms of what we want to do with the product. And obviously what is key for us is keeping it in tune with the market, particularly in terms of the assistive technology sector as well, which is where we have a particular strength in. And so in any of our development, we want to retain the simplicity and the ease of use of Inspiration. It's something that we know is a unique selling point of Inspiration. It's why it's still strongly recommended as a product. But as well as that, we want to make sure that any future iterations of Inspiration still remain familiar, even to those users that were on Inspiration 4. So it's a natural progression of users. It's not something which is revolutionary. We're transforming the product, and we'll transform it in a way in which it's very much education, learning led. A particular focus is on terms of the user interface. We know that it hasn't really had much attention for a number of years since version 9 was launched, a good number of years back. And so that is a particular focus of the development, making sure it's engaging. And one way of doing that is obviously making sure it feels modern and up to date, particularly to new users who are not familiar with Inspiration. Obviously, we want to give them a good impression as soon as they open up the application. But we also want to keep users focused on what they're supposed to be doing in terms of the tasks. Because obviously what we don't want to do is create some nice snazzy interface lots of bells and whistles in terms of features, etc. But it then becomes a distraction from what the user is aiming to achieve. And so again, that's one of our primary focuses, is making sure that the interface remains focused, not cluttered, doesn't have lots of features, etc., which a student or user will not necessarily be using. What we will be doing is focusing on functionality that helps users really with the core premise of inspiration, which is to capture, structure, analyze, synthesize, communicate, and share ideas. So those are the features. If we've got a recommendation, someone that's asking for something, if it can fit within one of these categories, we will seriously consider it. And what we're looking at is a tool for lifelong learning. So right down from age 9 through K-12, through to university, and right up into adult education. So for 2020, this is our priorities. Now, some of them are very basic, but it's very clear that we need to achieve this. So we know that currently with the migration across, we haven't got an evaluation copy. And we know that that's important if you've got students, users that you want to trial the software with. And so we're quickly working at the moment in terms of reinstating that evaluation copy. So if you want to try it out with students then, or a user, you have something that you can download and try with them. Now, one of the primary focuses, as I said, is to get that interface updated, something that feels fresh, modern, but familiar. So things such as the icons, for example, some of the color themes, the styles of buttons, checkboxes, radio boxes, all of these things that with some thought will quickly bring it up to speed. We're looking at a new symbols library. We work very closely with the company that's acquired Inspiration Maps. We're a great fan of that product. And so what we're going to be doing, and from feedback, is to implement the symbols library that's used in the iOS app within Inspiration, which then brings that again up to something that's more modern in terms of its look and feel. Now, what we're also doing is looking at some of the basics. You know, what is the default font? What is the default symbol? What is the default shape? Because with Inspiration, there's so much customization that you can do. And actually, if you spend the time and effort, it can look, your actual diagrams themselves can look very fresh, very modern, for example. But obviously, you have to take the time and effort to go through the preferences, get those changed, etc. And so what we want to do is step back, reevaluate what those defaults are, and set those. And so these are simple things that, if we get right, can make a big difference to the product itself. Another very basic requirement that I'm constantly asked for is, can we set the default background color, which currently you can't. So again, that's high up on the feature list. Now, the biggest piece of development is the outline view. And this has been on the roadmap for a while and is something that lots of users, so it's bubbled up to the top. And if you're a user of Inspiration and you're moving from your diagram or your map view, when you take it to the outline view, the order in which it is sorted is by the order that you thought. But from a writing perspective, that may not necessarily be the correct order. And so what we're looking to do is, if a user has used the visual views, either the diagram view or the map view, to try and organize the sequence in terms of how they thought they wanted their ideas to be represented from a writing perspective, we will design a resort tool that will allow the topics and subtopics within an outline view to be reorganized based on basically the positions on the connection points or the branches of a symbol in a clockwise fashion. And so, say, for example, anything in a 1 o'clock position would be top of the list and it would work round, and you would work from your main idea right down to the lowest level subtopic. So sounds easy, but it will give our developers, I'm sure, a nightmare, a headache in terms of accomplishing it. But again, it's something that users have asked for, and it's something that we're passionate to try and achieve. So that hopefully gives you an idea in terms of what our priorities are, particularly in terms of a first release. There may be a second release in 2020. We're still scoping out these ideas, how long it will take to deliver, and then we'll move on to what will be the next one. And so obviously there's things such as Chromebooks, for example, and other features, and they will then fall on in terms of what will be the next phases. Obviously appreciate, particularly in terms of certain districts, for example, that Chromebooks are very popular. And even in the UK, Chromebooks are popular as well. So it is something that's high up on the agenda. Obviously at the moment, what we're trying to do is just make sure the desktop meets the key requirements, and then we're going to move on to looking as to how we might be able to address those users that are on Chromebooks. The other thing with regards to the Mac version, with the products, it was actually split. So we acquired the rights to the desktop version. The actual Mac version is actually went along with the company that acquired Inspiration Maps. So diagramming apps, which is based in the US. Now, we work very closely with them. The founder of Diagramming Apps was part of the Inspiration team. And so, and obviously between us, we're working very closely because we want to make sure that both products remain compatible. And so in terms of the Mac version, work had already started in terms of converting Inspiration Maps to work on OS X. And obviously that's in line with Apple's development roadmap. And so it made sense for them to acquire the Mac version. So at the moment, there is no, I cannot give you a time limit or time scale for that. That's something that's being evaluated. There was some work that was done with regards to that. There is some dependency, again, in terms of some further stuff that Apple needs to deliver in terms of their toolkit for it to be finished. And so, so I guess what I can say with the Mac version is watch this space. But obviously, from our perspective, we're focused on the Windows version, and that's obviously the version that can be purchased now. Okay, now, before we jump onto that, I did actually want to start to solicit some of your views within this actual webinar. So I'm going to do a bit of a live focus group with everyone that's here. And these are some of the sort of really basic fundamental questions that we have. And so if you just bear with a second, I just need to move screens, bring up Inspiration, and bring up a poll. So if you're familiar with Inspiration, this will be your normal screen when you launch the diagramming view. Now, we're obviously looking, as I said earlier, in terms of the defaults. And so what I wanted to solicit was some of the basic questions that we've got. So, for example, when you launch, that would be your main idea in the middle. Now, another idea is that when you launch it, that main idea symbol is bigger. And so one question for you, and just bear a second whilst I launch the poll, is which would you prefer? The bigger main idea, the smaller main idea as your launch, or would you prefer it to be even bigger than that? Okay. Responses are still coming in. I think it's settled. So what I'm going to do is end the poll and share the results, which was big, followed by it could be even bigger than with the small one. So it's a very simple questions, but these are the basic fundamentals that we're trying to find out at the moment in terms of particularly the first impressions when a product is presented to a user, someone that you need to engage with as a practitioner, a student that's struggling. What we want to try and do is remove as many of these barriers as possible. Okay, so that was question number 1. Let's go on to question 2. Just bear a second as I'll fiddle around. Just to make this clearer for you. Okay. So question 2, I've got 3 symbols here and the default font is different. Let me know whether you prefer the first symbol, the second symbol, or the third symbol based on the font. Oh, it's a very close race here. Okay, even Stevens. Okay, so it was, if I end that and I'll share the poll. So basically it was quite close between the second and the third symbol. So the second symbol is using Arial and the third symbol is using Open Sans. So these are some of the fonts that we're considering at the moment as being the default one. And so that's quite good because I did a poll with my children yesterday, 4 of them, and they all went for Arial and I went for Open Sans. So I'm glad to say in this one, it's far more 50-50. And so, cool. So that's that one. Let's go to the next question. So we've got 3 symbol shapes here. Which would be your preferred symbol shape for the default when you launch the product? So we've got an oval. Actually, I call it a square, but it's a rectangle, and an oblong. Okay. This is some really interesting stuff coming through. Okay. I think it's settling. Right. It's settled. Let's end that. I'll share that. So the strongest was the oblong, followed by the oval, which is the current default at the moment, followed by square, stroke. What should have described it as rectangle. So brilliant. Thank you very much. That really does help. Right. Let's just close this one off. Oh. Let's go back to my presentation. Okay, so we're back on the slides. Let me just share that properly. Okay. So hopefully, in the previous section, I've given you hopefully an idea in terms of that, in terms of our direction of travel, in terms of what we're looking to achieve with the next version of Inspiration going forward after version 9. And so in the survey, as I said, there is a question that we've asked, which is to ask what features would you like to see, or any particular pieces of functionality you think could be improved and how, or things that you think should be removed. And obviously what we're trying to do at the moment is collect those ideas to help us develop that roadmap, because our vision is for this to be obviously a continual development path for Inspiration. Now, the other bit is obviously supporting practitioners and users in terms of using Inspiration 9. And obviously this will develop as we launch other versions. And so we've always had this certified trainer program. It's been particularly focused on the UK. So any trainer, it could be a disability practitioner, it could be a study skills tutor, it could be an assistive technology tutor, anyone that's supporting a student or user in terms of Inspiration 9 is eligible to sign up for this program. It's free. Obviously, from our perspective, we want to provide as much support so that our software is used as effectively as possible. And so we have developed a new e-learning platform to deliver that. It's Moodle. So from some of you who are in academic institutions, Moodle may be familiar to you. That might be a platform that you use already. And so the program is based on 4 key sections and 5 assignments that you submit. And so you submit the assignments. The idea of the assignments is to demonstrate that the use of different features within Inspiration, but based on, say, a topic or an interest that you particularly have. And so you submit that, we get that marked, and obviously you earn a badge for each assignment that you submit and is okay. And once you've passed all 5 assignments, you become a certified trainer. And what you'll then get is a certified trainer badge, which obviously you can put in your email, signature, etc. And so, and what that does also do is it obviously gives you access to Inspiration 9, because as a trainer, we believe that you need always access to the software. So that's something that you can obviously come back to each time we have a version, etc. You'll be one of the first to get access. If obviously, when we're closer to launching a version, you'll also have access to the beta version to give us your feedback as a user as well. So to show you the platform and what the program actually looks like, again, I need to come out of here. And go to our Moodle platform. So this is our training program. And as I said, it's broken down into different sessions. We've got 4 main sessions. You've got a basic introduction to Inspiration 9. Basically, you just got to watch the video. And then let's go to the next one, which is diagram view. So each section focuses on a particular key area of Inspiration. So at the start of each exercise is a video.
Let's begin today by using Inspiration's diagram view to create an idea map. But before we do that, let's cover.
Each one, the videos may last between 6 to 15 minutes, going through different features, functionality, and how they're applied. And then you complete the exercises. So there are a range of different questions that you complete as part of that. The aim is to develop your own diagram. If you're doing the diagramming assignment, the same in a map view, the outline view. And then once you've completed it, you would submit it, use within the platform. As you can see, I've got some submissions here, one that needs grading. So I know what my weekend will be doing is looking at that particular assignment. And obviously you would work through, get it graded, and then at the end achieve certified trainer status. So, and again, to sign up for that, again, it's on that webinar link survey tomorrow. Just tick that box, and what we'll then do is get that e-learning account set up for you, and then you'll get a username and password to then log in and start to complete the assignments and watch the videos, etc. The other thing that you might be interested in, if you haven't been already, is that obviously, being the new publishers, we wanted to develop a new website and to create effectively a centralized resource and training area for practitioners and users. And so we have got a new website, inspiration-at.com. Within that, we've got our resources area. And here you'll have access to resources that, to be honest, tended to be more, it had been produced, but only really used within the UK market. And we've realized there's no reason why this material cannot be accessed globally. So if, say, for example, you have students that you want to explain the use of inspiration, we've got explainer videos, one that's 3 minutes, as well as talking about inspiration, also talks about how it interacts with inspiration maps. There's also more of a detailed 10-minute training video on inspiration, which also includes things such as support resources and transcripts. So for some practitioners, they'll give this to the students and play the video with them. For other practitioners, they'll use this as a way to be able to effectively hone in their training skills to demonstrate inspiration to a student. And we've got various different videos, one on writing strategies, the basics of writing, using consideration showers, lots of study skills, applications of using the product. So as well as these explanation videos, we've also got the training and how-to videos. So within that, we've got over 60 different videos. Some of these will be ones that are in that e-learning course. And then there are others which you may be familiar if you've been using inspiration in terms of being able to use short micro videos to use each particular feature. So if a student's stuck on a particular piece of feature, they can go to this site, how to use the rapid fire tool, and they can watch a 1-minute video on how to use it. Okay, so we're coming to the last part. So it's now looking at really just giving you a view in terms of how we position inspiration, particularly from a study skills perspective. And so I'm now going to start working within inspiration. Let me just close this off. Close this off. Okay. View. Just bear a second. Lots of windows open. Right. So this would be a typical webinar. You're going to get a bit of a whistle stop because normally we'd do this whole piece within an hour. So we're going to be doing this in 20 minutes. But this will give you a high level view, and obviously you can then sign up for the more detailed revision strategies webinar when we publish them. And so what we look at is that we have webinars that focus on essay writing, on research in terms of note-taking, presentations, and revisions. So those tends to be the 5 areas that we focus on. And so what we'll be looking today is obviously the tools. So obviously Inspiration 9 is one of them, but also Inspiration Maps. Inspiration Maps has been a great addition, particularly in terms of that whole revision process where, for example, you can create your maps, your visual maps within Inspiration 9, but if you've got an iPhone or an iPad, you've got this opportunity now where you can transfer those documents over to your mobile device to have access to them wherever you are. So if you rely on those documents to help you in terms of revision. You've got the opportunity for being able to access them on your iPad or your iPhone in places where it wouldn't necessarily be convenient, on a bus, for example, traveling. If you've only got 5 minutes to have a look at something, your phone is generally on. You can get to your documents very quickly, far quicker than you can do on a Windows or a Mac machine. And so it's far more productive in terms of getting, far more efficient in terms of getting to those documents. And so what it has meant is that those documents now can be accessed electronically in a mobile way now that you couldn't do before. So let's look at the techniques, and then what I'm going to do is look at some of the diagrams that have been created with revision as a focus. And so when we're looking at revision strategies, what we're looking at is, well, what are the recommendations of using Inspiration 9 to make it effective? And so first of all is using short keywords for each idea. And so obviously each symbol, each image, each graphic is there to represent an idea, and that provides your visual cue. A visual cue is very important. That helps that particular idea concept to be retained from your short to medium to long term. And that's namely because for most of us, we're wired to think in pictures. If I say the word apple, for most of us, it'll be a picture of an apple. There is a, for some people, it might be the smell, it might be the text, but for most of us, we think in pictures. So if we can associate an image with an idea, then that helps to retain that information. And so, but as well as that is having a verbal cue. And so this is where obviously you're labeling that image. And so what we always recommend is try to use short keywords. You're more likely to read it. You're more likely to digest it, particularly if you're rapidly looking at that mind map to try and trigger memory recall. Obviously, is to try and connect those ideas together. It's obviously a basics in terms of visual learning, in terms of diagramming, mind mapping, etc. And also to label the connections is another hot tip. So what I mean by that is, say, for example, as always, with you can obviously double click and you can explain why you've connected one idea to another. Includes. So I've labeled that, but for most users, when we realize that they, the time and effort to do that, as well as obviously labeling your images and keywords, for example, not many users were doing that. So if you right click, there is a link phrase bank, and then you can choose some common phrases to explain why you've connected one idea to another. Or if you go to more link phrases, there's even more. So affects, consists of, contradicts, correlates with. So these are terms, mathematical terms, scientific terms, ways of explaining why you've connected one idea to another. Now, in its immediacy, it can help in terms of just developing those critical thinking skills, the evaluation, helping to evaluate why you've connected one idea to another. But it does have a purpose for the longer term as well, because if you look at that map in a week's time, in a month's time, you may have forgotten why you've connected one idea to another. So obviously these link phrases can certainly help in terms of triggering why you've connected those ideas together. Also, if you're sharing this, so if a student is sharing it with a tutor or a peer, it's explaining why they've connected one idea to another. And for a teacher, if they can see, obviously, that they've connected these ideas wrong, again, these link phrases provides a clue as to what that misconception is, what that misunderstanding, and obviously can put in the right remedial action. So short keywords, connect the ideas together to explain the relationship, label the connections, use images. As I said earlier, for most of us, we're networked to thinking pictures, so we can use images. That helps with memory recall, because quite often just by looking at a picture can help things to come back. without having to read text, for example. Also, for example, when you're creating your map, obviously, for example, you could design it if the cycle of the red blood cell. And so you could obviously design your diagram to reflect that relationship, and the images as well to reflect those images. So without even having to read any of the text, you've quickly got the idea of what that map is about. When you've got longer text, to use notes to expand on those ideas, and I've used that here. Obviously, you can attach notes to it, but you can also do audio text as well. So, and I'll show that in an example. So you have got a built-in recorder within Inspiration 9 so that you can, rather than type your ideas out, you can record your ideas against each symbol. And so if, say, for example, you've got a student who, limited working memory, needs to get those ideas out before they forget it, the audio notes feature can be a quick way to be able to get those ideas out before they forget it. And so I'll show you that when we look at an example diagram. The hide and show feature. So again, this, with each branch, each symbol, you can hide and show a section. And so within that, when it comes to reviewing your map, you can use that feature to be able to test yourself, hide a feature, see if you can remember it, then open it up again. Hyperlinks to resources, embed videos. So obviously you can create some notes, but then a few weeks, a few months later down the line, you may not really understand those notes. It suddenly becomes a bit muddy, unclear. You want to go back to your source material. So again, you can hyperlink, right click, click on the hyperlink tool, and you can hyperlink to a document, to a website, and to another inspiration document. Alternatively, you can choose the hyperlink tool up there. One of the common questions is, can I have more than one hyperlink per symbol? Now, we do restrict it to one hyperlink per symbol, but if you have multiple hyperlinks, then what we suggest is you create a note, and then within the notes, you can have multiple hyperlinks within there. Keep track, use the checklist feature. So it always feels good to know that when you're testing yourself, you can tick things off. So there is a checklist feature, and I guess I can show you that just so that you can check off areas of topics that you feel comfortable with doing. And then ultimately is being able to create that mind map from memory. So, review those mind maps at regular interviews. And this is, again, where the advantage is, where, if you got access to the app itself, you can create it on your desktop, transfer it over to the app, and then obviously you've got more opportunities to review those visual maps. It's far more accessible than on your laptop. So reviewing it regularly, again, I open up the note. We recommend that you review it 1 hour, next day, 1 week, and 1 month after. The aim is to actually be able to create that mind map from scratch without having to refer back to the original document. Again, as a tip, if you've forgotten a section, particularly if you're using a hide and show feature, look at another section. That might then help with the recall. And another big tip is to use consistency of color cues. So obviously you might be creating a range of different mind maps, visual maps, diagram, is to try and get into the habit of using consistent colors to mean things across all of your different maps. In that way, you're not having to interpret the colors that you're using each time, because as well as obviously making your diagrams look pretty alongside the images, colors is obviously a very powerful way to be able to categorize information to help you to spot patterns, etc. So getting to the habit of using color can be a great way of being able to start to categorize sections, for example. Okay, let's move over to a document. I'm not going to do this one, but I'll just check. So I use this quite a lot. So I've got various different passions. One is furniture making. So I created this map in terms of being able to select timber for a project. So that's one example. Another one is photography. So I've created effectively an ongoing map to help me to remember effectively the technical sides of photography, as well as the rules around creativity. And so particularly around things like composition. And so I've started to build this map up, particularly as, for example, I've signed up for a course. And so I might then print this out, have it easily accessible when I'm out on a field trip doing some photography as part of a course, or I might have it, you know, if I've got my iPad with me, I might have it on my iPad. And so within here, I've built this map up, and I've used effectively a lot of those tips that I've been suggesting in my last inspiration document. So for example, obviously I'm using symbols. I've particularly used color to differentiate the key sections. So the compositions are all in this purple color. Things that are more technical are more in the orange area. And the types, I've actually used some of my own photos. So, you know, looking at macro photography, so reminding me what macro is close up. I don't have a macro lens, so that was the best I could do with my zoom lens. Landscape photography, which is particularly my passionate one. So I've got one of my examples on there. I've got a portrait. So just looking at the broad categories of photography, I'm not great with portraits of humans, so mine tend to be of animals. And then looking at the technical side, which is the bit that I tend to struggle on, particularly on courses, remembering, you know, the various different settings on these digital SLR cameras. So one of it, looking at exposure. And so obviously I've got the relationships between shutter speed with aperture and ISO. And that the fact is that they all have an impact on one another. Your choice of ISO will have an influence in terms of your shutter speed and also in terms of your aperture. So the size of the actual hole in terms of what lets the light through. And so with that, obviously I'm showing that relationship to show the interrelationship between them. I'm using the link phrases to show how they correlate to one another in terms of the relationship. And for example, if I was testing myself, I might look at this and say, right, okay, exposure. What are the three things? So it's shutter speed, it's ISO. Oh, I can't remember it. Right, let's look at it and bring it up. And so, okay, so I'll tick off what I remembered. So it was shutter speed and ISO. Let me zoom in a bit so you can see that. So I've ticked that off and I've ticked that off. Now, next time I test myself, shutter speed, ISO, and aperture. Yep, I remembered all three. I can tick that off. That will also automatically tick this one off as well. And if you haven't used that feature before, if you go to tools, you can then show checklist, and smart checklist is where it will automatically tick anything above if all of the items below are ticked. So in that way, you can keep track of what you're remembering. Okay. Another aspect is using audio notes. So again, not necessarily creating notes, written text, but audio notes. So if I right click, I can insert video as sound, and I can record sound. I get a little player, and I can record up to 60 seconds. it's limited to 60 seconds. The reason for that is so that it stops you from being verbose. It's trying to keep you succinct. You're more likely to listen and to synthesize and to remember what you've recorded. And so I've done a recording. So hopefully this will come through the webinar. Click on that. This tends to be the default mode on a camera, and we'll take a light measurement across the scene and is ideal for landscape photography where there is low contrast. So if I've been looking at metering modes, I'm looking at these keywords, I've forgotten or I'm unclear. Rather than looking at some notes, I could click on an audio explanation that I've recorded for that. Obviously, I can create written notes just by adding a notes to it. And either to do that, I could either add or edit note or click on the notes tool there at the top. And within here, I can have up to 8 A4 pages of notes within each note against each symbol. So there's a lot of text that you can put into there. And I can also insert one graphic in each text as well, in each note, which will appear in your outline view. So in here, how to read a histogram, and I've got a diagram here that I pasted in terms of how to do that. Right, and again, I've got notes here that I've attached for leading lines. Use natural lines to lead to the focal point. So again, if I need a bit more of an explanation, I'm using notes to come back to. Now, I talked about hyperlinking to different resources. So I've got this great video on YouTube for the rules of third. So I'm hyperlinking to that. Now, if I had a video that was local, I could actually embed it. But for this one, it's a YouTube video. So I'll click on it.
There's this idea that in portraiture, it's the photographer's job to set the subject at ease.
Ask any photographer for basic composition advice, and they'll tell you to use the rule of thirds, bro.
Rule of thirds?
Rule of thirds. The rule of thirds. But what does it mean? Where does it come from? And is it really a rule at all?
Okay, I'll stop there because obviously we're here talking about Inspiration 9 and not about the rule of thirds. But again, it goes back to that point, is that you can hyperlink to those original resources. It could be a PDF, it could be a website, it could be a YouTube video, for example. And so what your visual maps can be, it starts to become your way in which you can group and organize all of the resources around that particular topic. So if you've got your notes, this particular keyword becomes unclear, you need to go back, you can obviously hyperlink to that source material. And so, and obviously what I've done is I've obviously using as many images and visuals, etc., to make this engaging and interesting, something that I do want to go back to. And for me, this makes it much more easier to sort of review from a revision perspective than rather looking at pages of notes. And particularly in terms of the images themselves, just by looking at it, quite often means I don't even have to read the text because suddenly all of that memory recall comes back because of it. Okay, so that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour in terms of revision techniques. Normally, it would be nearly an hour and we'll be building up this map. So obviously it's introducing you to the features itself, but hopefully that you've taken something from that in terms of some of the tips, but might encourage you to think about some of our more detailed study skills webinars as well. Okay, we've only got 5 minutes left, and I'm sure, obviously, you may need to rush off. So we've got some time in terms of questions, so we can go through them. So if you haven't posted any questions and would like to do that, then please put it into the chat pane or the Q&A, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. So let's start going through the questions. Just bear with us as I scroll to the top. Okay, so some of the questions, one of it maybe someone that came back later. What sort of timescale are you looking for a new version? So at the moment, I'm saying 2020. I'm hoping at the latest it will be in the last quarter, so October, November, December. Once, obviously, we've fleshed out the development, I'll have a better picture. Then, obviously, we'll start to give a clearer picture in terms of where the next version of Inspiration will be. It may be that we do a series of shorter bursts of development, so that we do a series of version updates, but that's all in planning at the moment. Okay, so we've got that. Another question, is the product a continuation or a full revamp of Inspiration? I think what I mean is, are you using the original code? Yes, we are building on the original code. There's quite a lot that's unique under the bonnet with Inspiration. Quite a lot of technology that has been built. And it's, I know with, you know, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel for a product where a lot of the core functionality is very popular. And so things that we're looking at is obviously optimizing that code, for example, and really it's the focus is in very much on the user journey, their engagement with the software. Okay, yeah. So obviously with the next version of Inspiration, it's most likely it would be a paid upgrade to the next one. So again, that paid upgrade would reflect that you're an existing user. And so again, once we get closer to that time, we'll be able to let you know what the situation is with regards to that. Okay, is there an easy way to set a print area so it can be clearly printed on a standard paper? Okay, so I guess with this question is that the user is having issues in terms of printing the diagram on one sheet of paper. Now, to be honest, that tends to be the default with Inspiration in terms of printing. We quite often have questions in terms of, well, I need to print it on more than one sheet. So, and how you do that. And so, you know, if you want, we have students who say, have a map and they want it across their whole wall. So they want it printed up 8 sheets up and stuff like that. Michelle, who's posted this, I'll follow up with you with regards to specifically with regards to that. Have the templates been improved, modified at all? So the templates haven't really been modified for a while. So there is over 90 odd, nearly 100 different templates within there. That is something that we'll be looking at in terms of obviously freshening it up, and also what we look to add additionally to those templates. Whether it's in the first phase of development, I'm not sure, but it's certainly something that's on the roadmap at the moment. Okay. Okay, so another question in terms of existing licenses once you upgrade. So as always with new versions, it is that decision in terms of how we deal with existing users. So the likelihood, as I said earlier, is that it will be a paid upgrade to the next version if it's a major version update, and we will be coming up with a model that obviously reflects the value that we have in our existing customers. So I guess watch this space with regards to that. Another question, are you planning on keeping the presentation view? Definitely. It's probably one of those features that even a lot of power users don't really realize it's there, but it's certainly something that we are want to keep. It's one of those actual wow functions, even for when I go in and see customers that have had site licenses for years and didn't realize it was there. And so we definitely want to keep it in. Over the medium to long term, we might enhance that as well. I know that we've had, requests to be able to create flashcards, for example, using your inspiration maps. And some of the features and functionality of the presentation view actually lends itself to that particular feature as well. So what I'd say is, yes, we're definitely keeping it. What we'd like to do is build up on that functionality. Okay, there's lots of questions coming through. Okay, I've seen a new version of my mapping software with a split screen view. Will the new version of Inspiration have this? So I imagine this is a split screen between the writing view and the map view. So that isn't an immediate priority at the moment. So the outline view will be a separate view to the actual diagram view, but obviously that is something that we would add to the roadmap, obviously, if that's something that customers would like to see. So, so I would say that it would be something that we wouldn't go with the next version, but it would certainly be something that we'd seriously consider for a future version after that. Do you have plans to update the symbol palette or change the options for getting images into the app? So yes, definitely. The symbols palette is on the priority list. So it is part of the first phase to get that updated. With Inspiration Maps, the symbols library within there has had, it's phenomenal positive response. A lot of users saying they would like to see that symbol library within the Inspiration symbols library. So that's what we're looking to do at the moment. A lot of those symbols are new, and so we'll be bringing those within Inspiration 9 and then starting to build up from that. Other options for getting images into the app? Yes, definitely. I think one thing that was good with the Mac version was the fact that you could drag images from your desktop in, which you can't do with the Windows version. And I'd love to do that with the Windows version. So if you have something on your desktop, you could just drop it in and it will just go in. So there's things like that that I would like to look at. Restore option to choose US versus UK dictionary. So that is something that we're looking at. So at the moment, it is the international edition, which is based on the UK English spelling. And so we are cognizant, obviously, particularly for educators and those in K-12, that the US dictionary is important. It was a commercial decision at the beginning just to focus on the international edition, particularly in terms of the development. But the US version core code base is going to be done at the same time. And so we are looking to see about the return of the US version, but I can't promise that at this stage. So, but it is something that's high up on the agenda at the moment. Okay, there was a question again on the Mac version. So again, the Mac version was acquired by Diagramming Apps as part of the Inspiration Maps. So there has been some work in terms of converting Inspiration Maps to be the new Mac version. That was paused because of some requirements that were needed from Apple and their toolkit to do that conversion. So at the moment, it's unclear as to what that roadmap is. And so at the moment, it's watch this space. I can't give you a definitive answer as to where it is on the map. Sorry, the Mac version. Obviously, fully appreciate, particularly within North America, the Mac is obviously a very popular platform. It's obviously very popular here, but Windows is by far the biggest market within this particular area. So I'd like to see a Mac version again. I'm a big Mac user myself, so I missed it. And so it would be lovely for it to be back, but it's again waiting to see can that conversion of inspiration maps happen for Mac OS X. Okay, I have a colleague in the US. He is an AT trainer. Is this available? I guess in terms of, so our program for the US is pretty much the same. We are selling, you know, if a customer wants to buy from the US, then we certainly will support that. If we have trainers that need to support students that are using inspiration, we will support them with licensing, with training, for example. So there's no differentiation. The only difference at the moment is that obviously fundamentally the software itself is the international English version. Okay, so another question, when looking to update the interface, will you also be rethinking the format bar at the bottom of the screen? It's often confusing or ignored by students. Yes, that's definitely on the high priority list. So effectively, everything here at the top and everything here at the bottom is being rethought in terms of icons, possibly size, everything just to make it clearer as to how and what each one of those functionality means. So yes, definitely that is being looked at. Will the PC files be compatible with the existing Mac via import, export? So with inspiration diagrams, the actual inspiration files were always interchangeable between the Mac version and the Windows version. And so if you were a Mac user and you'd created files on the Mac, they've always been able to be opened up on a Windows version and vice versa. So I'm a dual user. I use Windows and I use a Mac. And quite often for webinars and demonstrations, I use the Windows machine, predominantly because the most users that are on there are Windows, so they prefer me to demonstrate on a Windows machine. But day to day, I'm using a Mac. And so when I did have inspiration for Mac, before I had to upgrade to Catalina, I would be creating my diagrams in the inspiration for Mac, but I'd actually then be opening them up in the Windows machine without, you know, just opening up any file as normal and it would open up. The only special import export is if you're wanting to export or import files from inspiration for maps. And in that case, then you just go to File and you choose Export to iPad inspiration for maps if you want to take it to an iOS device, or Import iPad inspiration maps if you want to bring it in. And that's probably something we're going to reword as well, because since that was worded since then, the inspiration maps is now available on iPhones as well. So it's any iOS device. Okay. Hoping for a free Chromebook version, free or low cost. Certainly Chromebooks are on our horizon. Not necessarily free. As to cost, obviously, that's something in line, probably in terms of what our desktop pricing, would likely to be. And I'd say from our pricing perspective, obviously we do a lot of competitor pricing analysis. And so I'd say that we are very competitive in terms of our pricing. The other things as well that people are not aware is with our site licenses, for example, obviously you can install that onto all of your computers, but we do offer student top-up subscription licenses where, for example, every single one of your students can have access to install inspiration on their own Windows computers. And so this has been particularly popular in the UK market, where we first rolled that out, where particularly universities have been, with site licenses, have gone for this option so that students that they want to support can have the license on their own Windows computer. Okay, so I saw another vote there on the chat for the split screen option. So thank you for that. Obviously, if you've got a strong feeling for a particular feature, including that, fill out the survey tomorrow. I'm going to really look forward to the thoughts and suggestions that you have for features that you would like to see in Inspiration. Okay. Sorry, we are running over time. I think that's all of the questions. Okay, hopefully I've answered everything. I'll go back and to the question with regards to the printing, just to get more clarity on that one. But yes, we're over time, so apologies for that. But hopefully you found the webinar useful in terms of obviously looking at what our vision is as a publisher for Inspiration going forward. It is very much transformative rather than revolutionary. Building up on the success of the existing product. We have got some top priorities. Obviously, your feedback will certainly help us in terms of, evaluating that, as well as looking at what that roadmap is ongoing, for example. And certainly your feedback in the chat has been really useful as well. And by all means, if you haven't got a copy of Inspiration, tick that box and we will get that license sorted for you. If you're interested in the Certified Trainer Program, again, it's free. Sign up for that as well. If you've got any questions or I happen to have missed your question in the chat pane, there were quite a few, but hopefully I answered them all. Please just put that into the survey as well. There's a box for that and I'll be more than happy to answer them as well. I'll stay on for a bit. I'll stop talking. You've had me for over an hour now, but I'll sign off from talking, but I'll keep online for a bit. If you've got any questions that you would like to answer, I'll happily answer it. Otherwise, use the survey. So thank you very much.